Here's the first one. How do you see the US presidential election outcome impacting Indo-US ties, especially given Prime Minister Modi's strong personal rapport with President-elect Trump?
What do you mean specially given? I mean, we have it taken care of. So, I mean, the Prime Minister was among the first 3 calls, I think, that President Trump took. And look, India, I mean, Prime Minister Modi has actually built rapport across multiple presidents. When he first came to DC, Obama was the president, then it was Trump, then it was Biden. So, for him, there's something natural in terms of how he forges those relationships. So, that's helped hugely. And I think, the changes in India have helped as well. I mean, I know today a lot of countries are nervous about the US, okay? Let's be honest about it. We are not one of them.
Right. That's wonderful. That's great news. Lots of smiling faces in the audience. Sir, the next question that was sent in is this one. How do you see the reset in the global power dynamic play out as the balance of power shifts in some ways from the west to the east? And what are the likely intended and unintended consequences?
Look, yes, there is a shift. We are ourselves an example of the shift. If you look at our economic weight, you look at our economic ranking, you look at even Indian corporates, their reach, their presence, Indian professionals, which I spoke about. So, no question, there is a rebalancing, okay? And to my mind, it was inevitable. It was inevitable because at one level, because once these countries, after the colonial period, got their independence, they started making their own policy choices, then they were bound to grow. The part which is not inevitable is some grew faster, some grew slower, some grew better, and there the quality of governance and the quality of leadership came in. So, there is, in a sense, therefore, the constant and the variable. There is a trend towards a more diverse multipolar world. But there is also, a period when countries really surge ahead. I mean, it's a bit like would happen in the corporate world as well. And that's what you are seeing. But do remember one thing. The older, the Western economies, the older industrialized economies, they have not gone away. They still count, I mean, they are still today prime investment targets. They are big markets. They are strong technology centers. They are hubs for innovation. So, let's recognize the shift, but let's not get carried away and kind of overstate it.
Right.
And, distort our own understanding of the world.
Right. Thank you for that. Here's an interesting question. What's the one lesson from diplomats that you think business leaders need to learn?
Well, look, I think the real trick in diplomacy is to put yourself in the shoes of the other person. Not just in the shoes, actually in the
head.
In the head of the other person. That you train yourself. And that's, why do we learn a language? Why do we spend time, out of the country? Why do you fraternize? Why do you immerse yourself in other people's habits? Because ultimately you want to get in there. And if you can get in there, I mean, it's like, I mean, in a sense, the sports analogy, you're actually anticipating what the bowler is going to do because you are in the bowler's head. Or nowadays, from a Bumrah perspective, we're going to anticipate what a batsman is going to do because you're now in the batsman's head.
Right.
So, this to me is a very, very important skill. It takes time, lot of experience, and some natural talent.
True. You have to be like a sponge. You have to have empathy, I guess. And also, lot of the bookish stuff may not be reality, and you learn so much about culture and the way people think. Here's another question: how is PM Modi as a boss? Do you have early yearly appraisal sessions?
I have daily appraisal sessions. Look, I'd say, I mean, in a way, it's been for me pretty much, except for a year and a half, I was out of government, about 10 plus years continuously. In a way, I would say he's honestly a demanding boss, exacting boss. And I say that because he prepares, I mean, if you are discussing something, uh, you have to come fully prepared. I mean, you have to know what you're talking about. You have to make your, argument or your case or whatever it is. You must stand your ground. You must have the data. So, a second characteristic I would say is he's a very interactive boss. There are bosses who have made up the mind before you talk to them, or there are those who listen to you, give you a decision. His way of decision making is very much interact. It's there is a certain back and forth out there, and I frankly, I say this in all honesty. I mean, I've enjoyed working with him because, he takes a call. He takes a call and then gives you that latitude. So, say, for example, I'm giving you, let us say, the Ukraine. Okay. Once, I mean, he took a call that we need to get people out, do what it takes, use the Air Force, use the civil aviation, talk to people, tell me what I have to do. If I have to make a phone call, I will do that. If you have to send ministers out there but then he gives you that operational freedom. I mean, he will monitor it. I mean, he will want a feedback. Okay, I mean, it's not like he's not tracking you, but he's not micromanaging you. He's not second guessing you.
Right.
So, in that sense, I've actually, frankly, enjoyed the experience of this job.
That's a beautiful answer and lots of takeaways from that. Here's a wonderful question. Given your father's distinguished career, what are some of the formative values and principles that he instilled in you, and also what you may have absorbed over the years?
Well, look, my father, for those who may not be familiar, was also working in the government, and he was again he was a very he was not a typical government bureaucrat. He had a particular set of jobs which had a certain public activity. So he used to write, he would speak. Even when he was in the government, he would press his point of view. So the one thing certainly I carried away from him is to be a believer. I mean, if a job, work is not something you do from 9 to 5. I mean, and it's not something where you do your bit and it's somebody else's problem after that.
Right.
So, I mean, or you say in bureaucracy, it's not like the file left me and so he had a very strong beliefs on many issues. I mean, in those days, for example, the nuclear issue was very strong. A lot of it, he spent a lot of his time on defense-related issues. So, if you have to learn to kind of fight for your beliefs and your policy, convictions. But at a personal level, I think, look, we were a very typical middle-class family with all the middle-class habits which came. And I think many of those are very good habits. I mean, you live within your means, you do many things yourself, you
reuse old Cans.
Well, among other things,
My
yes.
family. Yes, sir. But we're so short on time. Down to I'm going to pick the last question. What's the atmosphere like when you're in the middle of intense negotiations with other countries? And what would be a few tips on negotiating?
Look, we go back to the diplomacy business.
True.
You know, I've also learned from people in business, I must tell you. I mean, I've seen some really perceptive. I even had a short stint in business, if you know, between my civil service and my political. It was my gap year, you
True.
can say. Uh, so, if I were to share a negotiating tip, it would be to study whoever you are meeting as exhaustively as you can and bond with them as quickly as you can, so that when the tricky issues come, they already begin to like you.
Right.
So if you are meeting someone, okay, I've actually picked up knowledge of sports, for example. You know, most people in the world, by the way, if you really want them to be nice, you know, you want
Drop guard.
drop guard, do sports. I'm now talking my generation, okay? So do sports, maybe do, you know, films, music, food.
Right.
So the more you study them, more data you have, and often you don't have, you wing it as you go along. But today you get a lot about people. You know, you know a lot about people you never met because the information is out there.
True.
So the more you can bond with them, then I find actually, you know, you'd be surprised how many of our problems. Sometimes you people say, okay, look, I really can't do it, but this one time I'm doing it for you. You know.
Right.
And they do that because somewhere you have made that effort to make that one time difference.
Right. So beautiful. It's actually all about the human connection, isn't it?
Absolutely.
And empathy to the other. Thank you so much, sir, for your time, these wonderful chats and contributions. And it's just always wonderful to hear you speak.